Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a special episode of the Real Forno Show. If you have been following along, I am very out on Hendon Hooker, so I brought in somebody smart to talk to me about him who is a fan, and that is Doug Farrar, the managing editor of Touchdown Wire. He is a believer, so we're going to pick his brain and get a sense of why he believes and why I should potentially change my mind. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Welcome to the Real Forno Show, managing editor of the USA Today's Vikings Wire, betting and college football analysis for the Fantasy Points website, publisher of Substack Run and Shooter, host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, as well as a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me now, again, in the bottom right corner, is producer Dave. And to my left is the managing editor of Touchdown Wire and the author of the great book, The Genius of Desperation, is Doug Farrar. How you doing, my friend?
Yeah, book's over there. Hey, man, how's it going?
Life is good. We're really excited to talk to you about Hendon Hooker. You released an article for Touchdown Wire that was, one, highly recommended by me, and two, I think it presents an argument that's much different than the one we've been talking about on the show, and it's why we wanted to have you on today. One thing that really stood out to me kind of in your intro, you spoke with Greg Cosell, who of NFL Films. He's been around for a long time and is one of the most intelligent minds when it comes to breaking down film. And something he said I want to get your opinion on. He talks about it being more of a true air raid offense than most teams run in college football. Can you elaborate on that for me a little bit? Because the way I view this offense is more of like a veer and shoot, where I like when I think of true air raid, I think of Mike Leach. Like what? Like is Leach not running a true air raid, and this is a lot closer? This element I'm not 100% sure on.
I think what Greg meant is more the dimensions of the offense than the system. I think what he meant, I mean, I can't get inside Greg's head, but I've known Greg for a long time. He's kind of the godfather of what we do. We wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't for him. I think what he meant, to extrapolate what he told me at the combine when I talked to him about it, is it's more about the dimensions of the offense and spreading people wide and then going full out. It's not it's not mesh. It's not the typical air raid route concept you would think of. So if you want to think of it as a veer and shoot, or just a lot of four verts wide, I mean, there's a lot of things that don't fall into the typical, air raid category that this offense holds. So I would say, I mean, the way I defined the article was to take Greg's quote and go from there and say, one, it's more about the width of the field and how you stretch a defense horizontally, more than vertically. Two, you have to separate Hooker from the offense in it, because the offense is not transferable to the NFL in a complete sense. Now, there are elements of it that are in the NFL. There are elements of it that the Vikings use, and used especially to beat the daylights out of the Packers in week 1, and I'll get into that. But you can't take that offense and just, people have tried, obviously, and, it works to a point. So I think my argument with Hooker is you have to separate the quarterback from the system and say, okay, the system is not necessarily transferable, but is the quarterback skill set transferable? And I think I went deep into the kinds of throws that I think you need to make in the NFL. And you have more examples of them with Hooker in some cases than others. But I don't think there's any question that he, in an offense that plays to, I guess we'll call it the stretch more than the spread, the way you're stretching a defense horizontally, you're creating impossible matchup situations, whether it's through alignment, whether it's through motion, whether it's through whatever. I think Hooker can, would I want him with the Titans? No. I think it'd be a waste. Would I want the Falcons? No. Bunch of 2 tight ends and, 5 yards upfield. I wouldn't want him anywhere near Joe Lombardi, but I would say that of any quarterback. So My primary argument, we get into specifics, was Hendon Hooker's offense is not NFL transferable, but I think Hendon Hooker is.
I find that interesting because I think one of the issues I have with trying to project Hooker out is obviously the offense isn't translatable, as you said, and Josh Heupel is arguably the best play caller in college football, so he's presenting he's presenting very advantageous matchups in the Jalen Hyatt game against Alabama, where he just spammed him against DeMarco Hellams for 5 touchdowns. Like
and by the way, Josh Heupel's doing his job. His job is not to prepare his players for the NFL. His job is to win college football games. That's
and he was great at doing so. And but when I try to project somebody out, I don't necessarily hold it against them that they're in an offense like that. So what I try to do is I try to see, okay, what is translatable about what he's doing? And just because he hasn't been able to do it doesn't mean he can't at the next level. And you spent quite a bit of time talking about that in one of the sections of your article. And the biggest question that I have is field reads and progressions. I did not see evidence on film of him making NFL style reads and progressions. He was doing it similar to what Sam Howell was doing coming out last year. He was looking at a safety. The safety was going to tell him what he was going to do pre-snap, and then he would only have to really focus on one side of the field. How do you contextualize Hooker not really having to make full field reads and what he's going to have to do in the NFL where that is commonplace?
Well, I would dispute the idea that he never did it. There are examples in my article of him doing it, of doing more than just this half or that half. And I think in an NFL where it is more quick game, there is more of that. You're reading a side. Not every quarterback in the NFL has a full field read ability. A lot of guys are see it and throw it. You can win a Super Bowl with guys who are see it and throw it. So I would think that maybe you and I place different levels of value on that. Not that I'm discounting it. It's obviously important. There are quarterbacks in this class who can't do it. Hello, Will Levis. And that's a problem. But I guess I would, when I went into that, because it was one of the things I looked at, I wanted to find enough examples of him waiting for a receiver to come open. That was my big thing, because the argument with that offense is everyone's always open all the time. I'm like, okay, well, that's true to a point, but it's not all the time. Nothing is ever just the one thing. And what I was looking for was, okay, he's got to wait for a receiver to come open. He's got to wait for a route to develop. He's got to go from his first read to his second read. How does he do that? And I saw some field crossing reads where he went from one seam to another. Are there as many elements of that as there would be in CJ Stroud's offense? No, because they're two completely different offenses. But I wouldn't say just because he didn't do it all the time doesn't mean he can't do it at all. And I saw enough examples where that could be developed. And you know how it is with college quarterbacks. You don't always get what you would like to get when you're trying to evaluate them. CJ Stroud said at the combine that he had wanted to run and be more mobile, and Ryan Day just said no. You're not always going to see. I remember when DK Metcalf came out and horrible 3-cone and he can't run a slant. He was running angular routes all over his tape in his final college season. They just didn't throw it to him. So I'm always careful to say that a guy can't do something. I'm more in the mold of what can he do. Now, some guys I'll put their tape on and just like, this is kind of hopeless. This is not good. And some guys just can't do certain things. Hooker's college experience does not preclude me from saying that he can't make those reads. That's the best way to put it. I'm not saying he did it all the time. I'm not saying he's going to ever be a Phillip Rivers as far as just going and everything's just there. Mm-hmm. But I'm not inclined to just disassociate him from an ability to do that.
Okay.
Once NFL offense with NFL coaching, and well, this is how we do it here. Do I think he might want to sit for a year? Maybe. I think that'd be a good idea. Do I think in the right kind of offense he could start right away and be okay? Also, yes. But I would like to see him. I think he's going to sit anyway because he's recovering from the ACL. But I'd love to see him sit behind a Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins, I know, Derek Carr with the Saints, Baker Mayfield. That'd be interesting. Him hanging out with Baker Mayfield. But I would like to see him sit for a year and sort of learn the way the NFL does things. But I don't see any real problems with NFL concepts to the point where I go, yeah, he can't do this.
How do you quantify the age thing? And I think there's many layers. There's many layers to the argument, and I kind of want to hear your thoughts on a full spectrum, because it's not just that he's 25 years old. He's also coming off the ACL, which, as far as ACLs go, I don't really care about that in a vacuum, but I think it kind of compiles on everything. And during his college career, they replaced him with Braxton Burmeister at Virginia Tech. He really didn't do a whole lot as far as being impressive. And then he didn't even win the job at Tennessee. He lost it to Joe Milton and then ended up taking over early on in the 2021 season. And he didn't really become a really good college player until he was 23 years old. With the full spectrum, how do you contextualize the age thing? And do you have any concerns with it moving forward?
I don't contextualize the age thing at all. I think in today's NFL, teams are much more inclined to punt after the first contract than they used to be. I don't think it's an automatic that it's a failure unless this guy goes into his third contract with us. I think teams are much more flexible about that for a number of reasons. Quarterbacks are also playing, later into their careers. I'm in Seattle. I just watched Geno Smith become a good quarterback in his 30s. It happens when it happens. I don't really care how or when. I just want to know that and why. And, the fact that he took some time to develop, I don't really, as long as it's sustainable and it's not completely dependent on external factors, which I don't think in his case it is, that doesn't mean a lot to me. The ACL thing, I mean, he doesn't have a history of injury. He's a pretty mobile guy. He will use his legs. So, am I 10% worried about that? Maybe, but I don't, the age thing, and it's all people want to talk about. I don't really, that's not a big deal to me.
Do you think you'd have a better opinion of him if he was younger?
Playing like he is now at like 21? Yeah, sure. Because then you're talking about a prodigy. Then you're talking about a guy who can run, a whole lot of stuff at a really high level, at a very young age. I mean, it's a good question. I think it would affect my opinion positively to a point. But again, I don't know how much NFL teams are expecting the quarterbacks they draft to be with them in their second deals. We see this now with the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. Like, how many times are you going to get that? I don't really, you might get the 4-year deal, the 5th-year option, maybe a franchise tag, maybe it's 6 or 7 years. Maybe you get that second, but I don't think it's going to be as common as it used to be. So, would I think differently of him were he younger? I could say that of anyone, but it's like a guitar player playing amazing solos at 19. If he does it at 15, well, okay, wow, that's the thing. It's the same solo, and it's not like he's going to be worse at it 5 years from now. So, I guess the context is I don't care how he got it. I just care that he got it, and I want to know why he got it, and is it sustainable moving forward?
Absolutely. So I want to explore this, kind of deviate from the topic here, because I think you brought up a point that I thought Sean McVay would try to exploit at the end of Jared Goff's rookie contract, and that is
I wrote like a
cycling
5,000
rookie quarterbacks.
about it. You and I are totally on the same page here. Like, why don't you punt?
So do you think that this is going to become a trend? Obviously, if the Ravens aren't willing to sign a former MVP in Lamar Jackson to a big contract, and we can discuss the semantics of the contract and wanting more money than Deshaun Watson, X, Y, and Z, but do you think that this could be the start of teams actually willing to take those chances because of how much more valuable a rookie contract has become?
I wrote about this right when they gave him the second contract. I'm like, wow, this is a real shock. And I kind of turned it as the new money ball from the NFL. If teams do this, where you got a guy that high in the draft, and over the years, you understand that the ceiling is very low. So what do you do? And what they did was they extended because, well, Jared helped us to a Super Bowl and he's our quarterback and we need a quarterback. No, you need a
Mm-hmm.
great quarterback. You need a system defining, scheme transcendent quarterback who will just go out and kick everybody's ass. That's not Jared Goff. You guys, your team faces him twice a year, so the ceiling is right here. And if he's in the right system, it's okay. I would expect that if you're look at what Derek Carr, Josh McDaniels had 1 year with him. I always thought Derek Carr was an above average quarterback, but you're not looking for above average quarterbacks anymore. You're looking for guys, especially in an era where you want trick shot artists who can run 4.4s and do it. It's why Anthony Richardson is so appealing, because there's a quarterback we've never seen before, just from an athletic profile perspective. I think unless the guy just defines a franchise in ways that are very hard to replace, I think teams will be more inclined to say, well, maybe let's give him a year on the tag. Maybe we sign him to a shorter term deal. Because the problem with Lamar is not that he wants more money than Deshaun Watson. The problem with Lamar is he wants a guaranteed contract. That's never going to happen again.
Yeah.
You just put that in the bank. So I do think teams might be more inclined to do that.
Let's get back to Hendon Hooker. There are two things I want to talk to you about, and then I want to be respectful of your time. I want to talk about him under pressure, because as much as he's a dual threat quarterback, I don't think he's a dual threat quarterback in a way like Lamar Jackson is, in a way like Josh Allen is. He is, I can either kill you throwing the football or kill you running the football, but I'm not going to scramble and be able to create plays outside of structure in that context. If there's something's not there, he'll run straight ahead, but he doesn't throw on the run in that creative sort of fashion. How do you see that, and do you think he can really grow and develop that area?
It was an area of some concern for me. I'm looking at his numbers here. Yeah, and he wasn't pressured a lot. Last year, I'm looking at Sports Info Solutions database, and all quarterbacks are worse under pressure, but he completed 23 of 50 passes under pressure last season for 269 yards, 216 air yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and 23 sacks. What does that tell you? He's more inclined to take the sack than to make some crazy, ridiculous, what are you doing throw. I'm looking at like Spencer Rattler. Last year he had 8 interceptions under pressure. That's not what you want. The 1 is okay, and the 23 sacks are just fine. We'll go that route. Yeah, he's not. Can he do like what CJ Stroud did in the Georgia game? Yeah, but he's not going to. I don't think he's a naturally explosive second reaction improviser as some quarterbacks are. I think he's good. My comp for him is new Geno Smith, and Geno can run around. Geno can, move in the pocket. I think Hooker's pocket movement is fine. It's not like Brady or Burrow level, but it's fine. But yeah, he's not. He has ways of evading pressure. Sometimes it's making the quick throw. Sometimes it's making the stick throw. Sometimes it's getting sacked. He has way. He's not hopeless under pressure, but he's not going to Mahomes you in a way that just, okay, we can't blitz this guy because he'll just demolish us.
Yeah, that's kind of how I saw it too. I thought it was really interesting, the conversation around Hooker, but at least before I watched him, was, oh, he's a dual threat guy, but it's not always what it seems to be in the conversation.
I remember when Jameis Winston came out of Florida State and people called him a dual threat guy. And I think without saying it out loud, I think it's very clear that some people just look at a particular pigmentation and assume dual threat. Jameis Winston is about as mobile as I am. That was never his.
Dwayne Haskins?
Yeah. Oh, I remember seeing that too. And by the way, Dwayne Haskins was RIP, horrible under pressure. Like you couldn't roll him out. But Hooker, yeah, the boot concepts, and if we're talking about the Vikings, obviously boot action, obviously motion to create openings. I can refer to the week 1 of last season when the Vikings just whooped up on the Packers defense because the Packers were just doing this passive stuff. And Kevin O'Connell was motioning Justin Jefferson all over the place. And everyone was like, what? Oh, wait, no, you can't do that. That's illegal. He's already good enough where he is. You can't move him around. By the way, Hooker, ton of motion, ton of play action. So both of those things, and he was very effective with both. So if the Vikings did take him, I think there are some systemic consistencies between what he was asked to do at Tennessee and what he would do in Minnesota that makes sense. It's not like, he was running QB draw at Iowa and now they want him to run like a Patriots offense. I go back to the idea that there's a lot that's transferable. Not that he's scheme transcendent. I don't know if there's any quarterback in this class who is. But I think there's enough on the ball, responding to pressure, being athletic, but he's not that guy. He's not Anthony Richardson. He's not Cam Newton. He's not Patrick Mahomes. And those quarterbacks are all athletic in very different ways, but he's not that guy. He's like the level below that, which is perfectly fine. Because at least
last question,
like when Mac Jones came out of Alabama, like, I don't know if this guy can make it in the NFL because he can't move outside the pocket.
Yeah.
That's not Hooker's issue.
Last question for you, Doug, and then I want to get you out of here because I know you've got a busy day. In the quick game, I noticed a lot of inaccuracies, and it's not necessarily inaccuracy, but really poor ball placement, making his receivers make difficult catches. And I noticed some of that is just kind of from his mechanics. I noticed he likes to do this almost like a jump set, where if he's facing one direction, he loves to jump and then just stands flat-footed and doesn't move until he just has to throw the football.
Right.
Do you have a lot of concerns with this quick game and some of those mechanics on those quick game throws?
I go back to the 20-hour rule, which of course every college breaks, but I know, and this 95, and I'll be doing edge rushers after I finish my other position lists in about a week here. 9 out of 10 edge rushers that come out of college, defensive linemen that come out of college, don't know how to use their hands. And I go back to, okay, you only have so much time to drill things up, and you're not facing the kinds of people that you would in the NFL, so we can get by with this. Yeah, I would agree with that to a point. I think the whole jump set, he's probably not going to do that in the NFL. A lot of quarterbacks like to stand flat-footed when they throw short, and I think there's a fine balance with that. As opposed, like Richardson, with Richardson, everything is a fastball, like everything. I think Hooker has some work to do in timing things up on short to intermediate. Yeah, sure. I could see that a lot of quarterbacks, he gets with they're going to work with him on that. The mechanical stuff, they're going to work with him on that. I haven't seen, and I don't want to say hopeless, but I want to, when I look at quarterbacks in this class who really have a lot of work to do, I don't see him as that. Now, is he better off in a, like what the track team that Mike McDaniel is trying to put together in Miami, that kind of thing? Yeah, than the aforementioned more limited offenses. But yeah, I mean, we can talk about specific things. I think the overarching point I was trying to make is that, in my opinion, you can put Hooker in the right kinds of offenses in the NFL, maybe sit him for a year, and he'll be just fine.
Awesome. Well, Doug, I really appreciate your time. I know you guys have a lot going on at Touchdown Wire. Where can the people find you, and what do you have going on?
Yeah, you guys too. You guys are killing it over there. Doing my positional list now. Put up a mock yesterday, and it's the top safeties, top cornerbacks, top linebackers when I'm finishing today. And we're just going position by position through all the draft prospects with advanced metrics and tape examples and all that stuff. So a lot of work, but a lot of fun.
Oh, absolutely. I'm currently finishing up Dorian Thompson-Robinson right now, and I don't know how to feel about him. He is...
Turn on a play and you'll love him. Turn on it's a first round undraftable. That's a guy with variance. Oh my God. Woo.
And as a 5-year starter, it makes it even more interesting to contextualize.
Yeah, that's, you talked about, does age matter? And were he like this at 21 with Hooker? If you're a 5-year starter and you're still struggling with that stuff, it's like, don't know. Can we get out of our own way here or not?
Yeah, I agree completely. Dave, do you have anything for Doug before we fire away?
I just want to say thank you for coming on. This has been interesting discussion. We will see how this drops. But if you had to pick one spot, where do you think Hooker gets drafted? First, second, third round?
Second. High to mid-second. I have alternated between giving him to the Saints and the Buccaneers in the second round in my mocks. Now the when Tyler, when you reached out to me, and like, well, actually the Vikings are a really interesting fit for him in a lot of ways. Because one thing I'll say, you go back to the way O'Connell likes to motion his receivers into disadvantageous situations for the defense. That's not a spread concept, but it's sort of a pseudo spread idea. And Kyle Shanahan is the best at this, because there's two kinds of motion. There's motion to indicate, there's motion to disrupt. O'Connell was using motion to disrupt, to mess up a defense. And that's a lot of what Tennessee does. So when we say spread, air raid, veer, whatever we want to call it, one of the things you're trying to do if you're a smart offensive coach is put defenses in positions where we can't really guard this guy. And whether you're doing it by stretching guys out in a field that's wider than an NFL field, or with motion, with formation, however you want to do it. A lot of play action, obviously, a lot of motion, obviously. And I thought, boy, it's not entirely dissimilar. I think if O'Connell sits down, is he visiting Minnesota? Do you know if they have a thing set up?
I have a tracker up at VikingsWire.com right now, and I have not seen anything where he has a scheduled visit.
There is rumor of it, but it could be subterfuge that they're not going to keep him on the list because they love him. Who knows?
He's going to Green Bay, though.
Oh, there you go. I would say that if O'Connell and Hooker sat down and O'Connell tried to impress upon Hooker the fundamental principles of his passing game, I don't think Hooker would look at it and go, that's Greek to me, man. I don't know what you're talking about.
Hey, that's good news if the Vikings end up taking him. Thank you very much for joining again, Doug. Yeah. And as we always say, Dave, SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikings.
SKOL.
And ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching the Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!